Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton Sawin coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Before we get started, if anyone out there has a story that they would like to share on the show, you can contact me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. And I'll leave that in the description. You can go to the description and find the email address if you can't remember that, but it's the channel name, basically, and minus Mysteries to Search. If anyone wants to contribute to help with this show and help with soundproofing the studio and all those kind of things, you can go to a link in the description. It's PayPal Me. It's super easy to use, and every contribution is appreciated very much. Now, today we have a fellow who has a show called Crypto PTSD, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, but he's just launching a show and with basically crypto stories and that cause people PTSD, and that is a very true statement. Most of you who are fans of the crypto genre know that many of these people get post-traumatic stress disorder from the encounters that they have, and then of course you have some of them that have the woo type encounters, and you know, that's not PTSD, I don't guess, but I'm sure he would even cover an encounter like that too if they, wanted to share. But anyway, I'll let this guy introduce himself. Hello, buddy. If you would, just introduce yourself, and then we'll get into your story.
Hey, Brenton. My name's Dustin. I'm from Missouri, born and raised here. I had an encounter in 2014 in Missouri that flipped my world upside down. And I quickly learned that going to family and friends was not such a great option. I did have a few that believed me after, talking to them and telling them everything that's happened. And then once they saw the whole picture, they said, that they believed me. But most of them, if they didn't just laugh in my face, thought that I misidentified what I saw or was just hallucinating, I guess. I don't know. But the reason I started the show is I found that the best medicine when you have an encounter, especially an encounter that you're not looking for. You didn't do anything wrong. For me, I was just driving home one night, and when you talk about it, it helps you. And the problem is people are scared to talk about it because a lot of times people run and tell somebody right away, and then they get laughed at, they get made fun of, and so they stop talking about it, and they suffer from that. And the reason I named it Crypto PTSD, I'm not saying that I had PTSD from it, or everybody who sees a cryptid has PTSD. Some do. I do believe that, but no matter what, we all suffer. No matter what, we all suffer to some degree. Even if it was just a good encounter, people devote their lives to it. They spend money in their free time going out trying to see it again. And then others who had either threatening encounters or just, it scared them. They suffer because they lose what they love to do. Going in the outdoors, fishing, camping, hunting, any of those things. And I lost all that. I ended up going on a show and talking, and I got a positive feedback from that, and that helped me. That let me know that I had a group of people I could go to and talk with, and so that's why I started the show. I wanted to create a place for people who have seen cryptids. Now my show is mainly a Bigfoot show. Right now I'm just getting started, so I'm doing one show a week, but eventually I'll be doing a show on Bigfoot and then a cryptid show a week. But it's a lot of Bigfoot, and then the Crypto Monday mix up. If we get to where I'm doing 2 shows a week, we'll be on Mondays. But right now, I'm releasing my shows on Mondays. And I'd like to thank you for having me on. Your show is one of the ones that I listen to all the time, because that's what I did. I went about a year before I told anybody about what I saw and what I had started to figure out was going on around the property I lived on. And I dove into the podcast. Yours, Wes's, Vic's, I mean, all of them. I couldn't get enough because listening to other people talk about what happened to them made me feel like I wasn't crazy, It made me feel like especially when you hear an encounter and you can tell, that person saw something, But Brent, I'd like to thank you for having your podcast and for having me on tonight.
Right. Do you think that, I know that there are some shows that cover the subject from one certain angle, and I cover it from all the angles because I'm searching out what the mystery is all about. And I don't want to cut somebody off that thinks it's something different than, you have some people that believe that these things are just apes, basically. You have some people that believe some of these things are human remnants of some type, like Nephilim to descendants of Cain to, and then you have some people that think they're supernatural in origin. And where I've covered this topic and talked about supernatural beings can be physical, I'm at least covering all the different aspects of the theories out there, so that if someone's wanting to find out, because no one has proof, no one can tell you exactly what they are, do you think that it's a valuable thing to cover it from every angle?
Absolutely. I personally believe that they are a flesh and blood creature, but I don't know. That is just my opinion. I feel like I have some things that can back that up, but at the same time, like my opinion and your opinion, they vary. But the common denominator here is we know there's something out there that we can't explain. And so I think the bickering has to stop. And I think if we all come together with an open mind and discuss this, we need every side of the coin here to get this figured out. I could definitely be wrong. You could be wrong. Any of us could be, because we don't for sure know. So I think it would be foolish to disregard some people's encounters because their opinion on the origin of these creatures is different. So I'm just like you. I'm going to stay open to all sides here.
Right. And I believe they're flesh and blood, because sometimes whenever you say something about it being I guess, if you were to just take, for instance, angel, some people assume angels don't have bodies and they don't eat, but that's not true. If you look in the Bible, angels ate with people. Apostle Paul explained the different kinds of bodies that there are that have been created, and he even said that angels have bodies, humans have bodies, but the glory is different. Whatever the heck that means, I don't know. But manna that was given to the children of Israel was bread that was given from heaven that humans could eat. So angels could actually come here and eat our food, and they could even bring their food and we could eat their food. So I think that there's this misunderstanding of what a supernatural being is because of the way we've defined it in our own heads. But if you really look at what the definitions are in the scriptures, it doesn't say they don't have bodies. They definitely have bodies. They even wrestled with people, like Jacob wrestled with an angel and threw his hip out. and he wasn't going to give up. He's like, I'm not going to quit until you bless me. And they were physically encountering each other. So a Bigfoot encounter could be, a physical encounter with a creature that eats and hunts and everything else, and it still be yet a supernatural creature. The only disembodied creatures that there are would be demonic in nature, that have been disrobed from their bodies, and they're awake. They'll never have be subject to a resurrection according to the Bible. So I think that where I search out these mysteries from a biblical worldview, it helps at least put some perspective on the different theories and what they could
Absolutely.
they could mean. And if you don't subscribe to that, that's fine. But some people say, well, he thinks that they're just some wispy, see-through kind of creatures out there. I do not. I've never said that. I think they live in the woods full time. They have to hunt. They have to eat. They have to survive just like the rest of us. And if they are Nephilim, a hybrid creature or something like that, then they can even be killed. Israel killed them all the time. They hunted them down and pursued them and cut their heads off and all kinds of things. And it's interesting that they would cut their heads off when they would catch them. I don't know if that's something that is necessary to kill one or what have you, but that's what they would do. They'd behead them. And but that's just guess. It's a theory. They may be just some form of ape, but it seems very odd to me they would have human-like intelligence. And out of all the stories I've collected, they have intelligence that are beyond an animal. Like they're self-aware. They're aware of their own presence. An animal typically isn't aware of its own presence. Like I think, therefore I am, kind of thing. Um, you know, um, kind of like when I've had my kids go in the kitchen and try to sneak in the cookie jar. And it's like you can hear it all crunching and stuff, and it's like, "Hey, get out of the cookie jar!" And how do he know? You know what I'm saying? Because they're not aware of their own, their
You
own.
mean self-aware? Like
It's like you're making noises that you're causing, and you
oh,
know what I'm saying.
yeah.
A child, they have to grow into that, and I think there's a human characteristic about being aware of you and your impact and I guess it's hard to explain that. Maybe I should think about it a little bit and then try to explain it. But um, these creatures even plan and they strategize, and they do recon on people's homes. It just, to me, it seems beyond an animal. uh, there has to be some human property to them. And then you have the evolution type people who would say this a remnant of Gigantopithecus and things like that. And those theories are theories also. I'm not saying I'm right and they're wrong. But I try to fit it to the biblical narrative because I believe that's the best scenario for explaining the things that have been reported over time, and it would be the best explanation. But anyhow, that's good. I'm glad that you are approaching it from a standpoint where you're going to let people tell what they think. Because it's their encounters. Let them tell you what they think. And
Exactly.
so and over time we'll learn, even if it's a mass hallucination type thing or a hysteria. That's a mystery in itself. Why would millions or hundreds of thousands of people be seeing these things, and throughout time, and folklore even. You take even like the land bridge that was built from like Sri Lanka over to the it's like an ancient land bridge that was seen that's under the water going over to an island over from like India to Sri Lanka, I think it is. And their myth is that these monkey people built this thing. So I mean, maybe there was some kind of being that was like a monkey people, that like we call Bigfoot, that built this. And when you look at some of the drawings and what have you, it has these ape looking look Bigfoot looking creatures, and it also has these dog man creatures. So that was just super interesting to me. I thought I might make a video about it. Why would they draw that? And that's kind of some of the cryptids that are being reported. But anyway, let's get into your encounter that really started this off with you on the Bigfoot genre. Anyway, and then I wouldn't mind talking about some of your other encounters too.
Okay. Well, I want to say one thing real quick here is I didn't realize until here recently that I had encountered these creatures, or I believe I had encountered these creatures several times throughout my life, and I didn't know what it was because I didn't see it, and so I always chalked it up to that was odd, and kind of put it in the back of my mind. And since what happened to me in 2014, and then what happened, the next deer season, and got me digging into this and thinking, have I remembered some of these things that have happened? And, I believe that most people who do not believe in the subject that are outdoorsmen have experienced these creatures and just never knew what it was. But so I'm going to skip some of those. Like you said, I'll start with the 2014 encounter and kind of tell you what was happening on the property I lived on. So, 2014, I was driving home one night. My driveway is just under a quarter-mile long. I mean, it's a pretty long driveway, and it's shaped like a hook. And right at the point of the hook is the house, and that right there is the garage. You have to walk through the garage to go into the kitchen. That's how we go into the house. Well, on the other side of the house, or on the curve of the hook, we have a shop, and then we got some fields and some stuff out behind the shop. Well, every night as I drive down the driveway, I veer to the right of the road as the driveway starts to curve, because shoots off of the curve there is another path that goes to the east field. And I see deer down there all the time. Deer, coyotes, possums, coons, whatever. And so I do this every night. It's a habit. I literally do it every night. I still do it as I drive home now. But I veer to the very right of the road. I actually go off a little bit, and at the last second, I turn to go up to the house. That way I can keep my lights down there for as long as possible. So this night I'm doing that, and I see something dart across the path. And instantly it looked odd, but I thought it was a deer. That was my first thought. It looked thicker than a deer, though, and the locomotion of it was it just shot across the path. It was real fast and real smooth, but I didn't get a good look at it, and I saw like a glint of like red eye shine, and it could have been orange, but it was like a reddish color, but it was just like a glint of it. So I automatically am thinking deer, even though deer's eye is not red. They're normally like a bluish green type color. But anyway, so I'm slowing down, and I see over to the right, my family member has a tractor trailer parked there, and I thought I see this glinting, and I thought at first that the reflective tape off of the back of the trailer, the semi-truck trailer, had come off and was flipping in the wind. I thought that for a split second, but what I see is eye shine, and it's looking at me, looking across the path, standing and ducking all at the same time. And it was extremely jerky and the most fluid motion at the same time that I had ever seen. And that's why it didn't make sense. Like, this thing's doing this, and my brain can't put it together because I'm looking at these eyes that at first were like a whitish yellow, and then at the very end, when it squared up to me, were like a reddish orange, or maybe like an orangish brown. It's hard to explain type of color. But this thing is standing and ducking, looking across the path, looking at me, and it's jerking as it's doing all this. And I have said before, it moved like a crackhead. But since I've looked into this, I would have to say it's like the way a chicken moves its head. You know, it's extremely jerky. It's bobbing and weaving left and right, but it's smooth and fluid at the same time. And it's going up and down and up and down. And I see the distance that these eyes are moving, and they're probably, from the tallest they got to the shortest they got, is about 6 or 7 feet. And if that was the tape, I would be seeing the reflective part all the way up, you know? And so I knew it wasn't that. And then as it's doing this, and my brain is trying to piece together like what I'm seeing, because I can see the eyes. The eyes are about the size of hen's eggs. They were very large, and they were probably 7 or 8 inches apart. I mean, from outside to outside, they were huge. I knew it wasn't a deer, but I still hadn't pieced it together as it was moving. And then it's about mid stance, and it turns and looks at me, and it is like coming up, and it stands straight up, and it's squared up to my truck. And as soon as it stood straight up, I mean, it paused for just a second and then shrunk back down and disappeared. Now, it had to have went to the right where I couldn't have seen it, because I know it didn't go across the path. But when this thing squared up to me is the first time I saw the entire outline, and my brain really grasped what I was seeing. It had this thing was 3/4 the width of my truck. I had an 89 GMC pickup. It was at least half. I know it was at least half, if not more. It was the largest thing I had ever seen in my life. I mean, this thing was it was a giant. In every term of the word, it was a giant. And once it stood up and stopped, the outline was like the shoulders. Now, the shoulder closest to the trailer was its left shoulder. And as it squared up, I think it was just behind or just touching the trailer. But the first thing my brain saw, other than the outline, was how big the head was. And it was a round head. It was not a coned head like everybody else says. It was very round. It was more round than cone, but it was huge. And then the shoulder, if you put your hand on where you would get a shot in your arm, that muscle right there was literally like a basketball. It was so large, and it was curved. And muscles at the bottom, you know, as they go out, you know, coming off your body, they're curved, and then they flatten out, and then coming back into your body, they curve. This thing was rounded all the way, and at the bottom, it curved back up a little bit. And it was like a perfectly round muscle. And that struck me. That's what I focused on the most, because it was so odd. Like, if you look at a person who's on steroids and done a lot of steroids, their muscles get so big that at times they look unnatural. You know, it looks gross or just wrong because it looks unnatural. That's the only time I'd ever seen anything close to it, was guys on steroids have that muscle so big that it's actually rounded. And once it squared up to me, it stood up and squared up to me. And as soon as it got, as tall as it was going to get, it was like a split second and it just went down and then it disappeared. Now, I'm not saying it sunk into the earth, but it went down below where I could see it. And there was pallets there, and tall grass. I I never saw the arms or noticed them. Maybe I was looking at them the whole time and just didn't notice them. My encounter was probably 7 seconds. It seemed like forever, but it was probably about 7 seconds. And I had my high beams on. That's another thing. In those old 89 GMC pickups, those high beams are bright. And those are really the only details I could make out. I could see it was kind of darker in the middle of the chest, kind of like it was outlining pecs or something. But that could have just been my brain putting that there. I don't know. But it did seem darker in the center. The overall shape of it was kind of like a V shape, It seemed like he got smaller towards the waist, not a lot, but the shoulders were so huge that it made a V shape.
Wow. Man, that's incredible. Now, you said the head was round.
Yes.
Now, did this thing have kind of because I think there's possibly a more human-looking type that's bigger, and then a more ape-looking type that's a little bit smaller, and then there's even a small version they call little people. But the ape type is like 9-footers, that kind of thing. Sometimes a little more. The more humanoid type sometimes will even have tusks that come up from the bottom, or the people will see these little tusk-looking things, and not real large, but these things tend to be even a little bigger, from the 10, 12, and on even on up size range, and they tend to have more like a hairdo, beard, that kind of stuff. And then there's combinations between those. With the round head, did you notice like any kind of hairdo, or
No, it just looked like a uniform shape on the head. Like, I imagine if there was a hairdo, it would have like been, kind of misshapen on one side, or you know what I mean. But it wasn't. It was just.
Did you notice any beard or anything like that? Facial?
I didn't, and that's part of the issue, is because after I saw that, I didn't know what I saw. I did not think it was a Sasquatch. I did not think it was anything. I thought it was a monster because I had no idea.
Did it look more human or ape-like?
I mean, the size of the muscle I would have to compare to an ape, but its outline was very human-like, other than it was so large,
Yeah. It almost sounds like you've seen the type that people call mountain giant.
Well, see, and that's what's odd is it was in Missouri,
It's a Bigfoot, though. But well, that's just a name they put on it. They tend to live out away from people more, where the Sasquatch type, the more ape-like type, will come in and be looking more at the human population. Then they're not as elusive, what I'm saying. There's a type that seems to be a little more human-like. They'll avoid populations more so than the more ape-like type. But who knows? Even the cone head thing, though, when you look at you can't really tell if it's a cone head unless it is a side profile. Because even if you look at something that has the cone head, if you look at it from the front, depending on if you're above it or level or what have you, they don't they don't look like they have a cone head until they turn their head sideways, kind of, because the from the brow ridge on back to the tip of the cone head, the long skull, it slopes backwards. So from the front view, it can look very round.
Yeah, well, I wish I would have seen more detail in the nightmares I've had over this. It's kind of funny because I didn't see any details of the face other than the eyes, but in my nightmares it's always got a different face. It's just kind of something weird that has happened since then, and I don't have very many anymore. But it's always a different face put on it.
All right. Well, nightmares are a sign of PTSD for sure. Um, so, wow, really interesting encounter for sure, man. It's a scary situation. Something that big, if you see something that huge, it just, I mean, your mind is trying to process it because it's so abnormal. You look at it and you're thinking, what the heck is that? And then your mind is just spinning, spinning, and spinning, and it never does catch up because you can't place it.
Yeah, until it stood up. But before it stood up, I could see that whatever this was had a flat face because of the eyes. When it was looking at me and looking across the path, I could clearly see that it had a flat face. From the eyes, when it turns like a deer, whenever they turn their head, you can still clearly see one eye. This thing, when it was looking, I could see, and you can actually see that it has a flat face as it's turning, and then when it turns, there's no eye shine, and then it turns back.
Right.
But until it stood up and kind of paused for a second, that's when I put the entire outline. I guess my brain caught up to what my eyes were seeing, and that's when I finally pieced together the entire shape.
Yeah, like a cow, they have eye kind of on the side. Humanoid, they have the eye to the front. So if they turn their head, you're not going to see the eye shine. And you're saying that the eye shine was red?
Yes, well, kind of. I'm not very good at describing colors. At the beginning, I thought it was like a whitish yellow or whitish orange, kind of, because I thought it was the reflective tape. But at the very end, when it squared up to me, I know for sure it was like a reddish orange or like a brownish orange, and I don't know what. It's hard to describe. It was like a dark orange color or dark red color. It's kind of hard to describe.
Well, I've collected encounters before where the eye shine actually changed. It went from
Yep.
a yellowish, like an amber, um, yellowish, kind of orangish color to when they made it angry, it got more red, which is
Well,
very strange. I even heard of it being kind of a white looking eye shine. And
I've seen
then,
that.
yeah, and then someone makes a whoop or something, and then it goes from white to red, and it scared them so bad they take off.
That's kind of funny because I had an encounter where I was showing actually my mom, and almost that exact same thing happened, except it didn't turn red. And we figured out it was the angle that the light was hitting it, that we were standing, depending on the color.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know of this one encounter where the thing was walking down the hill, and it was the eye shine actually was they claimed it was emitting light, and I have some footage, and it looked like two flashlights. Man, it was projecting light, and I didn't really know what to do with this footage because, like, man, ain't nobody gonna believe this. They're gonna say it's some kind of hoax or something. But it was in the footage, it's white looking kind of light, like a flashlight would be, something similar to that. But this encounter that I'm talking about, the thing was walking down the hill, and it was like light was emitting from the eyes, and they could see it walking down the hill. It was a huge looking Sasquatch thing. And one of the guys that was with this other fellow, and these were woo type people. He thought this thing was going to be one of his guardians or something. But as it was coming down the hill, his friend that was with him, is watching too. There was like three of them. I think it was three, maybe four. But one of them made a whoop. Like whoop, and the eye shine as it was coming down the hill looking at them went from white to red instantly, like it ticked it off.
Wow.
And that stood out to me. It's like, man, that's would that be pupil dilation and it changed the color, or they
Well,
they claimed that there wasn't any source of light that would be reflecting, like it emitted light. So that, it made me think also back to some other incidents that, even an encounter I had before where I encountered a creature that emitted light. Um, but I don't know. That's their testimony. Maybe they didn't realize there was a light source behind them,
yeah.
and there was an angle change or something. Who knows for sure? But it stood out to me enough to take note, and then it made me want to get back a hold of the people that sent me the footage of this thing that was emitting this light
Yeah.
from the eyes, and it was kind of running back and forth from these trees, and the light would kind of shine to the side, and it would shine towards you, and it would like shine to the side, and it would run, and then it would like look between the trees towards you again. It would shine towards you, and then it was going like back and forth, and I was like, "Are you sure that's not somebody over there with flashlights?" And it's like, "No, man, there's nothing over there." It's like, it was so
Wow.
strange. It was
Yeah,
very,
that's
very weird.
unusual.
Yeah, and I was like, dude, I can't put that on my channel, man, because people are gonna be thinking that's some kind of hoax. I know
Yeah.
they're gonna say it's a dude with flashlights. What they're gonna say, because it was
Yeah.
far enough off where it could have been one light,
Yeah.
but the way it moved would more look like head movement, not a person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it was going back and forth and it was peering out, that kind of thing. So very, very strange. Maybe I might just go ahead and, publish that. I'd like to get a hold of them and let them, tell, because, I was trying to get location, and I actually Googled the location, was looking for roads that could have been back that direction, and housing and things like that. And from what I gathered, it didn't seem like to me that there was, from where they were, was already far out there. But from where they said they were standing, and the direction they were filming, there's nothing that should have been back there other than if a camper was out there or something. You know what I'm saying? Because I was thinking maybe a neighborhood or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to narrow down and trying to figure it out. Um, yeah, very odd, for sure. it's a it's a mystery, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is. It's amazing how long it took me to figure out what was going on my own property, because we were having odd things happen that we thought were large drunk guys running around the property. So yes, it is all very odd.
So around your property, so your home was on this property, right?
Yes.
Did you ever have any like banging on the house?
I
Um,
we did, but it it all kind of came back after I had another thing happen. that got me looking into this. And once I started looking into this, I started piecing all these other things together.
Yeah, and I understand that too because I had, even after I was covering the Bigfoot topic, um, I had a Bigfoot encounter down at Dale Hollow, and my mind wanted to make rational explanations. Even though I kind of even got a glimpse of it, it was a short glimpse of it going from one tree to another. I was trying to make myself think, well, that was some dude in a hoodie, that was going across the thing because it was in the spring. So I was like, well, it's a dude in a
Yeah,
hoodie. But I mean, like four trees being pushed over, limbs being broke, things being thrown at you, stuff walking around your tent, your dog freaking out. And you got all of a sudden deathly ill for like 3, 4 hours when you walked up in the woods. Every time you tried to walk up towards the area that this stuff was happening, you got creeped out and you turned around. That all that adds up to me. Um, and I only got a glimpse of the thing because it was kind of, I was looking up the hill, and it kind of, the hill rounded off, and so I seen the thing from like the waist up, going from one tree over to the other, and it was so heavily canopied, that the trees were so thick and the brush and everything was so thick that it looked kind of silhouetted, like a dark figure going from one tree to the other, but it moved fast, and it was um, from the maybe the waist up kind of deal. So, but the reason I was thinking it was a hoodie because it was kind of a cone shape from the side. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I thought maybe there was some other fisherman that was collecting firewood, and that's why I was hearing so many trees falling, and you know,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Because your mind wants to think all that kind of stuff first. You don't want to think, that's a Bigfoot automatically. But the dog, man, I'm not kidding you, man. The dog was so freaked out, it wouldn't come out of the tent. It's like, come on, dog. And this was one of those yappy little dogs that run around barking all the time. And on this
yeah.
trip, this dog wouldn't even come. It wasn't barking. It wasn't yapping, man. It was staying shutting up in the tent.
Definitely didn't want to come out, did it?
No, man. And whenever I would be in there sleeping, it would be digging like its nose under me, trying to get under, and you can't get under me or I'd crush you, I weigh too much. But it would snuggle up and it would wedge itself under me as much as it could, like it was just so scared. And I didn't even piece that together at first. And my buddy that was with me is like, what the heck is wrong with the dog? Because it was actually his dog. And and it's like, I don't know. I think your dog likes me more. I was making jokes with him because he would get out of the tent and want to go. It's like, come on. He'd be hollering at his dog, and his dog wouldn't come out. You know, I'd be like, dude, because when you go camping, sometimes you get wore out, and it's like that. Dude, I want to sleep some more. And you go ahead and fish for a while if you want to. But anyway, that's very interesting for sure. But anyway, the activity you had going on around your place there, um, so you were having activity you didn't even really ponder until later.
Yeah, I actually was. Do you want me to tell you what
Yeah, yeah.
brought? Okay. I I went deer hunting with my cousin, and it was late in the evening. Honestly, I almost didn't even go out because we weren't going to get to go out for very long. But my cousin was with me, and he wanted to go because he had never been deer hunting, so I was taking him. Or maybe he had just only once or twice, but we walk out of the house, walk around the shop, and for a year after my encounter, I didn't, or I didn't tell anybody. I didn't talk about it. And that happened like at the beginning of the summer, sometime in 2014. And then the following deer season is when this happened. And I started piecing things together after this. So, I thought I saw a monster, and I didn't know what it was. I honestly kind of blocked it out. I didn't really think about it until this happened. And then this is what opened it all up and got me digging in to try to figure out what this was. But we were walking around the shop, and we were right there where I saw that creature the previous summer. And we're walking, I'm talking to my cousin, and we're going on the path to go across the east field to go into the woods. And my cousin goes, "Do they have horses in that field?" I'm like, "No, there's cattle over there." And he's like, "Well, then is that a deer?" And I look up, and there's this buck running across the field. And it was a windy day. And so immediately I grunt. He doesn't hear me. I grunt louder, still doesn't. And so when I grunt the third time, I basically just yell. And he hears it, and he stops. I shoot. I actually nicked the back of his heart, so he was going down. But he runs over by this holler and ends up dropping right there. So we drag him up. We drag him up the fence row around the gate that we just walked through to head through there, and drug him to the back corner, which was probably within 20 yards of where the creature was standing and ducking to gut him out. And it's right in the corner of this fenced in and gated area. And it's like a 4 or 5 wire bob wire fence all the way around this in a little square. And then there's a gate. So I gut him, pull. I'm not trying to gross anybody out. I know there's people who don't believe in hunting or don't like it, but I gut them. I pull the gut pile out, got it laying there, and then you have your diaphragm. Or there's tissue that separates your heart and lungs from the rest of your, small intestine, stomach, liver, all that. And so I had hit him in the back of the heart, and so his chest cavity was full of blood, and I cut it open, and it's pretty much dark as I'm doing this. And I pull the stuff. I'm trying not to gross everybody out here. The stuff in his chest cavity out, and the heart is my favorite part of the meat. And so I wanted to take that inside. I wanted to get a sharp knife, and then I wanted to bring my truck and my cousin's car down so we could use the headlights to finish cleaning this deer. So we go inside, which is right there. I mean, this is the shortest hunt of my life. It was 2 minutes. And at this point, it was the biggest deer of my life in this area. So when we walked through the gate, I closed it. And because I was scared of somebody stealing my buck, I shouldn't have been, because we have a driveway that if somebody comes down, I mean, we know it. It's like a 1/4 mile long driveway. Somebody would have to hike through the woods to get it. But anyway, so we close it, go inside, and we're gone no longer than 10 minutes. We come from outside the house. I get in my truck. He gets in his car. We drive down there. Well, before we had left, I pulled the buck down closer to the pathway there so our lights would hit it. We get down there, and I am cutting off his male parts of him, and I'm like, hey, I tell my cousin, hey, throw this in the gut pile. And so I hand it to him, and I crack a joke because, he's new to this and the part of the animal I just handed him. And so he's like, oh, man. I'm like, throw that in the gut pile, and I'm trying to split the pelvis of the deer, and one leg keeps flopping over, getting in my way. And so I look up, and Jordan is still standing there, and he's still got the male parts of this deer in his hand. And I'm like, man, you want to take that home with you? What are you doing? Get back over here, And he's like, Dustin, where's the gut pile? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's right there. And he's like, no, it's not. So I get up and walk over there. I'm kind of aggravated because I'm like, how can he not see this gut pile? And I walk over there, and you could see where the gut pile was. And so guts inside you are clean. They're not covered in blood like people think. And if you've gutted enough deer, when you pull them out, you can do it without getting blood all over them. Well, I pulled those out, and then I got into the chest cavity, which was full of blood. And so I tipped the deer over to let the blood seep out. When we went back in, actually, I'm sorry, when we got back is when we pulled the deer over. I think Jordan grabbed it. But anyways, you could see where the gut pile was and where the blood had ran up to the edge of the gut pile. And now that the gut pile was gone, it was seeping and filling that shape that was left from the gut pile. And Jordan goes, what could have done this? And I'm like, it was nothing. Or I might have said, it was coyotes. Just don't worry about it. Come on, let's load this deer up and go. And because I didn't want to think about it. I knew nothing could take a whole gut pile within 10 minutes. If it was a bear, which are extremely rare in our area, black bear, if it was a bear or a mountain lion, or coyotes, I don't think they would have had time to eat it all. But if they did, I mean, it would have been drug and ripped. And I knew it wasn't people because people wouldn't want the gut pile. And so we load the deer up. I go, end up hanging up my deer, and I think I dropped Jordan off. I can't remember. But when I got back, I took a flashlight, and I started walking circles around where the gut pile was. I would take a step out and walk a circle, take a step out and walk a circle. And I'm thinking, if somebody stole this, an animal didn't eat it here, but they would have had to have drug it off or carried it off. And if it did, there's going to be sign, there's going to be stuff being drugged because there's no way you can carry an entire gut pile as an animal, especially without leaving sign. And I'm thinking, they had to have set it down by the fence and pulled it underneath. And that's where I'm going to find it. So I do this until I get outside of the fence, like yards past the fence, and I'm doing circles. And there's absolutely not one single drop of blood that I saw, and no drag marks, nothing left behind, no bits and pieces. It was just like something came and picked it up and walked off with it. And that freaked me out. And it got me to remember or to start thinking about what I saw the previous summer. And I started investigating this and looking into it online to figure out what this could be. And that was the first time that I thought this could be Sasquatch. And then all the thing. Go ahead.
What time of year was this?
This was during deer season.
Okay. I was just kind of wondering because there's certain times of year that they would be wanting the organs and stuff for the vitamins and the certain types of.
So this is rifle season, so it's mid-November rifle season. I believe it's normally like November 14th or 15th when it starts.
Right.
And it was in rifle season, so it wasn't too cold that day. I remember it wasn't bad, but it hadn't really gotten cold yet either.
I mean, the gut pile is actually a very high vitamin and protein part of the carcass in a way,
The liver and all, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valuable resource in a way. I mean, a lot of times when you have like Sasquatch activity around a place, you'll find a carcass and it'll be gutted. And they'll leave the carcass because they're eating the heart and the liver and the kidneys and all that kind of stuff. And they'll leave the entire carcass because at that point, that's what they're wanting for vitamin, and the nutrition from it. And so them to, think that the gut pile was that important. You took the heart. They probably didn't like that. They were like, darn
Well,
it, he took the darn heart, man. That sucks.
I can tell you this: if they would have stepped out then, I probably would have given it to them. I would have just handed it right over.
Right. So, yeah, the gut pile. I mean, even when it comes to cattle, you take like the chitlins and stuff like that, made out of the guts. And that's valuable stuff to even humans. High fatty content and chitlins, and so very interesting for sure. I mean, there's nothing that would come up and be able to snag a gut pile and be a clean getaway with the whole gut pile.
Absolutely not, unless I had left it, and something came and ate it all, every bit of it. But like coyotes, when they kill something or eat something, they rip it to shreds,
Yeah.
They don't just sit there and eat it, because a pack of coyotes will fight over it as they eat it to show, who gets to eat first.
There would be pieces left. There would be pieces.
Exactly.
And some of the gut content,
Yeah, it's
So
if it was a
you didn't see any of the gut content or nothing, like, because the
I did
intestines
not
and stuff like
see
that are going to have stuff in them.
I
So if stuff was eating the guts, they would probably eat, and there would be remnants of it left. It wouldn't be just a clean takeaway, like nothing there, and blood
I
fills in the dent.
Yeah, I did not see a single drop of blood or a single piece of anything. The only thing I saw when I got back was the blood pile, or the blood puddle. And the thing is the lungs were in that. The lungs were covered in blood when I pulled them out, because the chest cavity was full of blood. And I don't know how I did not see, because all the grass around this area and in this time of year is a yellow. It's a dead yellow color, and its blood red really sticks out. And so it's pretty easy to track through this field. And whatever it was had to have stepped over a 5-wire fence. It could not have gone under, because if it would have put the gut pile on the ground, went through and then dragged the gut pile underneath, I would have seen the sign. And there was absolutely nothing. I did not see a single drop of blood. I did not see anything left behind.
So it seems more likely that there was something with hands that was able to pick it up, not jaws.
Exactly. Hands or a wheelbarrow is the only two conclusions, or a pickup truck. And I know a car didn't come down there, and people are not. If somebody would have walked up to me and said, like, if two guys would have came out of the woods with a wheelbarrow, which I would have been able to see the tracks of the wheelbarrow, and said, "Hey, sir, I saw you just shot that deer. Can I have that gut pile?" I would have said, "You can have the entire thing," because that's not something people want. Now, a lot of people take the liver and the kidneys and the heart, but everything else, and I left all those except the heart. So I would have given it to somebody. Why would have, people sneak up and try to steal it? Just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and some people don't think that like the Sasquatch and stuff like that would make baskets to put stuff in, but there are some of M.K. Davis's analysis that he thinks that Patty had a strap with a bag hanging on the opposite side from where it was being filmed. And there's good evidence of that, really, from when you look at the footage a little closer. That she actually had like a bag with a strap that was hanging over. The side was being filmed; it was over that side, but the bag was on the opposite side, and that's why one of the reasons why the movement was like it was, because it was holding that bag to that one side.
I've never seen that one.
Yeah, I think that's a good explanation too, because um, one could have came up with some kind of something to collect the gut pile, put it in there, and be gone. You know, step right over that fence, and you would never see another trace. Because you couldn't, gut pile is something that you grab a hold of with one hand. You're going to be dragging stuff.
Exactly.
The
And
intestines are very long, and so
a human being could not by theirself
right.
carry a gut pile without dragging things.
Yeah, so it
It's
couldn't have been a
impossible.
human. I mean, it couldn't have been like a human being grabbing it and taking off. It couldn't have been unless they were to put it in something. But why would they
Yeah.
want it? That would be
Well, I
stupid.
would have seen them come down the driveway. I had the gate closed,
Yeah, and
and
they
we were
wouldn't want the
gone. No
guts.
longer. And
And
in the 10 minutes we were gone, that was probably counting a minute to walk to the house and a minute to walk back. So, I mean, we were right there, and we would have seen it. We would have
yeah,
seen somebody
and plus
come down.
humans wouldn't want the guts. It's not what
Exactly.
that's not what you would have took. Um, maybe the heart and the liver. You know, I don't even know anybody that would want some of the other organs. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Yeah, it's very few. I only know one guy that keeps the liver from his deer kills.
right, liver and
I don't
heart
eat.
is
I don't
about the
eat the
only
liver.
thing, but kidney and that kind of stuff. Nah, it's not an American kind of thing. An animal, coyotes and stuff like that. If they had to come up there and chomped on it and started dragging it, that would have been drag marks. It would have been. So
Yep.
yeah, that's a very interesting deal, dude. That if it came up missing, it was cleanly taken. That's very interesting. The only other thing it could have been is the other Sasquatch, um, in the area that would have come up there and just jumped out there, grabbed the stuff, and took off, or a Sasquatch with some type of something to put the stuff in.
Well, what was creeping me out is for it to have done this, it had to have been sitting there in the wood line to the right, watching us.
Oh yeah,
If it didn't see me shoot the deer, then it came when it heard the gunshot. But it had to have sat there and watched us gutting that, because this is basically a field on a slope of a hill, and it's a gentle slope. It's kind of at the top of the hill, and to the right there's a small field, and then it's a holler that's wooded, and then to the left it's a larger field, and then there's woods and a lake and a turkey barn.
yeah,
And it's over there to the right is where almost everything that happened around the house happened in that area.
right, yeah. Well, I know that there's areas in like Florida when people do pig hunts. These Bigfoot will be spotted out in front of the pig hunters, um, because they're waiting for them to kill the pigs. So they'll go snag them. There's been many cases where people have killed a deer and the deer carcass is gone. Heck, I killed a deer one time. I know I shot this deer, huge buck, and I could not find it. And I know I hit it. And it was too easy of a shot. It was like bam, and it was gone. And it was over in the wildlife refuge in Kentucky here, and it's like I could not figure it out. It's like, man, I hit this thing. I saw it hit it, and I seen the blood, but then it's like the trail was uh, there was no trail. It was like it was just picked up and it was gone. And
When you shot it, did it drop, or did
yeah,
it flinch and
yeah,
then take
but it
off,
took
or
me a
what?
while to get up the hill to it where it was at. But when I got there, it was gone, and there was not like drops, and it was like it wasn't a blood trail or nothing, man. It was like it was just gone from where I know it was. And I've known other people who have killed a deer, and they watched the deer laying there on the ground. And they saw a big hairy arm come out of the brush and drag the deer into the brush, and it was gone. I've even had stories of people on that told me about these things stealing their kills. They're taking advantage of the kills. But I also
Yep.
know that these things are really good at making kills because I believe they're using infrasound. Um, One story from Utah where the uh, uh, there was a deer that was standing there all confused, and it was like just zonked out, and the guy went up to it and grabbed it by the horn, sitting there patting it. He couldn't
Huh.
figure it out. He's like, this is the craziest thing ever. He called his family. His family came there, and the kids and everything was petting this deer for like 2 hours. And it was just standing there letting him do it, like all confused and dazed and what have you. And then after 2 or 3 hours, the thing starts coming to, and everybody backed off and it let it go, and it ran off. And they had a bunch of Bigfoot activity. Their dogs being killed with huge footprints all around the dog cages and stuff. A lot of different activity. Um, and I thought, well, the thing was hit with infrasound and it was confused. It can disorient you and or infrasound can do lots of different types of things to you. And I've talked quite a bit about infrasound. I was thinking about making another video on it, but infrasound can do lots of different types of things, um, even encoded somewhat with information to um, not just one type of thing, but it can make you forget. It can make you disoriented. It can make you sick. It can make you fall asleep. It can do all kinds of things. Depending, I mean, and it's a known thing about infrasound and ultrasound. And when I say infrasound, that's one type of sound, but there's also ultrasound. There's lots of different sound techniques, and I compare it to when angelic creatures smote people with madness or blindness or this and that. There's several different kind of things, even a spirit of fear. And you compare that to the encounters people have and what happens to them. Yeah, even up to like, you know, they knew they were standing there looking at a Bigfoot, and all of a sudden they don't remember nothing. 45 minutes later, they're driving in their vehicle. That kind of stuff. That's all, even in that kind of scenarios in the Bible. You know, with so it made me wonder about these things being hybrid Nephilim type creatures that have voice mechanisms that can emit sound. Because even some of the people that are that say, "Oh, I'm the flesh and blood," which I am too. I know they're flesh and blood. Um, and they say, well, these things were emitting a sound that was causing these issues, amongst the people that was out there investigating.
Well,
It all fits exactly with what I'm saying. They just use different terminology.
I will say that I haven't heard or felt the infrasound, but I have heard them speak 4 times on 2 different occasions, and it was a deep and it was the deepest voice. We were the first time it happened actually happened before my encounter in 2014, and we as our family called it the large drunk guy. There was a large drunk guy running around our house talking at night. I've heard that, but I have not heard the infrasound yet,
Well, a lot of times infrasound you're not going to hear.
or
Um,
felt the effects of it.
yeah. Well, you might not notice. A lot of times it might make you fall asleep. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times people don't notice. I know one researcher who was out in the woods. He went off the trail and he walked down and looked at the lake, and he turned around. He was standing there looking at a Bigfoot, and all of a sudden his phone rang, and he answers his phone, and he knows he's sitting there looking at this Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden he's on the trail walking back down the trail, and the thing that made him know that remember that was that he looked at his call log, and he seen that he had answered his phone and stuff during the time, and he was, it was like I remember that, but all I remember was being back on the trail, and you know, at the time, I'm just saying he was standing there looking at the thing, and it hit him with infrasound and made him forget everything, and all of a sudden he was back on the trail walking in Tennessee. It's kind of crazy. I'm not explaining it real well, but yeah.
I hope that never happens to me.
Yeah, and I had a story one time on the channel there where a guy was riding a bike and he stopped, and he heard growling. It turned into the sound of running water, and it made him feel warm. He starts taking his clothes off and folding them, and then next thing you know, his friend splashed through the mud puddle.
That was on Wes's show.
Yeah, exactly. And it woke him up, and he realized what he was doing. And the only thing that stopped him was that he couldn't get his jacket into the bag. That he was folding his clothes up, put it in the bag, and because he was going to take his clothes off, fold them, and put them in the bag, and walk towards the sound of the water. And that made you think right there about the 411 missing person stuff, where they find the clothes folded. It's like, man, something was. And this dude said that they found some big footprints, and also he said that the growl was coming from above him at first, like it was like in a tree or something, growling that down at him, what have you. Very, that to me is interesting, because that to me is the infrasound. That is the smiting people with the things that you find in the Bible. The effects that you find, what happened to people when you read those stories, it was the exact kind of thing. People would forget. They would be, next thing you know, they would be in another place or something, or they would have fear and flee, or all those scenarios, man. They're in the stories. Not being able to hardly move, or that kind of stuff.
Have you watched any of Mark Zasky's videos? Well, he's got a video on his website that it's the only time, and it's the only video that I've ever seen where somebody has claimed to that they think they were hit with infrasound, and the camera showed signs of it. They showed signs of it, and there was a Bigfoot right there. He was walking up. It was at night, and it's actually in the intro to a lot of his shows. Whenever you see this tall grass, and he kind of highlights his head that runs off, and Mark yells, "Go!" and him and Melanie run through the dark. It was that encounter, and he was walking up, and basically the camera starts vibrating, and he goes. Well, that's not on this encounter, but yeah, that did happen at a different time. But as he's walking up, they hear something run off. They run around, don't find it, and they come back to the area. And as he's walking up to this bush, the camera starts vibrating, and then you hear him going, "Oh." Well, like he's about to puke up, and the camera's vibrating the whole time, and then he makes like a third noise. He's like, "Oh," like you can tell, and he narrates it and says the camera had a malfunction and I wasn't feeling well, and then it stops all of a sudden, and then this thing growls from the bush, and that was an amazing video. I think everybody should check that out. That's on his website. But that's the only time I've actually seen the camera, the person, and the noise, all three, when somebody says they think they got hit with infrasound on a video.
Yeah, I had him on the show. He's on like 2 different shows, and he was going down into the brush. And one time he actually got hit. Well, and there was another time where you could hear a very deep, like, I mean, it was so deep. It's like, dude, he starts yelling at Melanie, "Get the hell out of here!" And he was beeping some of it out because he was like, "Get the f out of here," kind of stuff. It's like, and she wouldn't go, so he starts pushing her, and they had walked by the thing once and come back by, and this thing basically was right there. Yeah, I mean, they were walking by these things. They're in Florida, and these woods aren't like super huge. Or they're walking right through their areas, but also, man, they've got lots of footage of turning around with the cameras and stuff like that, and they're right there,
Yeah.
5 feet from them.
Yep.
Some of them
Actually,
was scary looking stuff, man. It was like, dude, that thing was gnarly. It had to snarl. That you're so close. That's what I can't get people to understand. That you can walk right by one of these things. It could be 5 feet from you, snarling at you, wanting to jump out and freaking just pounce you and eat you. But they don't. That's what really bothers me about it being just an animal, because they don't. Him and his brother was walking down a trail one time, and there was one following silently beside them, and they were both using a camera, and testing out these cameras. They were looking all around, turning around, and looking forward and turning back, and just the cameras were moving everywhere. But they would keep running by this creature that was in the bush, maybe 6, 7 feet from them. It was silently walking beside him, and it looked angry.
we
It was
actually,
gnarly. It was
my
scary looking, dude. He was like, dude, what's going to happen when this damn thing grows up? The people are going to come up missing. And we had one show where during the show we talked about campers that had come up missing. There was 2 different groups of campers, and people had come up missing out of both those groups. And the it wasn't on the news. The officers and stuff like that were basically saying, yeah, there's a couple people missing and blah blah blah, and we were linking it to the 411 stuff, but it's not a joke. This is not a joke. It's not just an ape out in the woods. This is just too crazy of a thing to say this is some form of ape. Apes don't walk 5 feet from you in the bush, stealthy, and not be discovered for thousands of years. You know what I'm saying? Or even hundreds of years, even with cameras, and still stay elusive. You know what I mean? Because there'd be a lot of people say, "Oh, that wasn't nothing," blah blah blah. And you know, to me, this is something deeper. There's something to this. I'm telling you. And to me, that what makes sense is that they're in the early, from the biblical narrative. Let's just say, let's take that hypothesis for a second. Um, Cain was ostracized from the general population. God cast him out. Said, "No, you're separate now. Bam, you're gone. You can't even associate with these humans no more." And he said, "Well, what am I going to do when I come across people? They'll kill me." So God put a mark on him that would cause fear to come upon people so that they would not kill him. Okay, so leave it right there for a second. And so now when we think about he's ostracized, okay, some people say, okay, well, the flood came after that and it killed out all the Nephilim and stuff like that, because the Nephilim basically were a spawn from the daughters of Cain, who, the daughters of Cain before he was ostracized. Okay, he had a family already. The daughters of Cain, the sons of God came down and intermixed, and that was where the giants came from. Now we know that Bigfoot are giants, really. 8, 9 foot tall. In the biblical sense, that's giants. All the giants in the Bible were about 8, 9, 10 foot tall at the most. That's giants. Now, okay, the daughters of Cain mixed with the sons of God, created Nephilim. But when Cain was kicked out before that, and the Bible says that Cain knew his wife after he was kicked out from amongst people. He was ostracized out away from people, out into the wilderness. And it said he knew his wife again. So he started having children. Now, if his children before that were having relations with these creatures and becoming giants and all that kind of stuff and looking more human like, then if he was ostracized out when he was already smoked with something that would cause fear to come upon people, and here these sons of God come mixed with his family after he was already cast out. He knew his wife and he started having kids, and all of a sudden his daughters again are becoming more and more mixed with this stuff. Then that mark that he had, I believe, was his hairiness. When you look in the scriptures, and it talks about those things that live out in the wilderness, away from people, and doleful creatures and all that kind of stuff. And the word satyr, that means hairy. It talks about in Isaiah a creature that lives out in the wilderness, away from people and everything. There's no people around. Matter of fact, if a town is destroyed, these creatures can move in. It talks about the satyr and doleful creature and screech owl and all these other kind of things. But it's like, all right, then the word satyr means hairy in the Hebrew. To me, it makes sense. And here, then the flood comes. In the book of Amos, it talks about these people who dig themselves into the earth to escape the judgment, right? The judgments of God. This is Old Testament, so what judgment are you talking about other than the flood? Well, it turns out that whenever you have a flood like down in New Orleans, you have these ants and stuff that live in the ground, huge ant hills and things like that. After a flood the whole area 8 foot deep. After the flood resides, these ants will come out of the ground because they dig their ant hills in such a way that the water can go down the holes, the holes and stuff like that. And then later, they have air pockets and all that inside these things. I think that they dug themselves in and there's some that escape the flood, and to me, the best case scenario for explaining what Bigfoot are is remnants of cane that was smoked with a mark. And then when you look in the book of Jasher, and there was like these three different groups. One of the groups of people were smoked with something that was it caused them to be like apes and elephants. Now I have a story that talks about these Darrow creatures that I know I saw. You know, they came after me and what have you. But apes and elephants, man, sounds like there's a judgment type thing that comes on people every once in a while that that might make a Bigfoot type looking creature. That's a theory. Maybe it's nothing. I don't know, but that's a theory that I have when it comes to these weird, strange Bigfoot type creatures that are human like intelligence. And they seem to be held back by something because, man, as big as the population is now, they could come out of the woods and take over this planet.
Yeah, they're definitely formidable creatures that, if inclined to do so, could rip you limb from limb.
Yeah, I think they could. You couldn't resist. I mean, and they're in every state, dude, except for Hawaii. I just think, man, it's like, golly, there's tribes of them. People see the little ones. They see the little footprints. Mark Zaxby, he sees the little footprints, the big footprints, the medium footprints. There's tribes. He shows you pictures that are in the brush of all kinds of them. Different faces. It's insane. But anyway,
Yeah,
let's call the Bigfoot episode the Bigfoot episode, and maybe you can come back and we'll do like another episode of other kind of stuff, and I'll come on your show and tell some stories of my own. Is that okay?
yeah. Are you wanting to end it here?
I mean, unless you got some more Bigfoot stuff.
I do. I don't know if you want to hear it, but I do
yeah.
have some more.
You can tell all you want to. You can tell a bunch of it.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll go into the times that I heard them speak.
Okay.
The first time was before any of this had happened. Before my encounter in 2014. I would, when I sleep at night, I'm not a heavy sleeper. But whenever I've got my nephew sleeping in the house with me or in the room with me, I'm a very light sleeper. But I'll wake up all groggy, try to figure out what the noise was, woke me up, and go back to sleep. Well, during this 1 week, I was waking up every night wide awake, and that is very rare for me. When I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm groggy. But I was waking up and I was 100% awake, but I couldn't figure out what was waking me up. And then the wall that shares in the bedroom I was in shares a wall with the next bedroom. There's a cat in there, and after I would wake up, the cat would run in between the shelf that's basically pressed up against the wall that shares the room. The wall that my room and this room shares, and it would sit there and meow, and then it would meow, and then keep me up. It was making me mad. So the first night it happens, second night it happens again, and I'm like, this stupid cat, like, I can't stand this cat. And my mom always kept the window in this room that the cat's in open at night. That way it would air out the smell of the cat staying in there all night. And I hated that because if anybody ever wanted to break in, they could just climb through that window. Now, it had a screen on it, but it was still an open window. And so, you know, the second and third night when I'm waking up, I'm trying to figure out what is this cat doing that's waking me up first, because it's like I would wake up and then shortly after I would hear the cat scurry underneath that shelf and start meowing. And so I started paying attention because I'm like, the cat's got to be messing with something, making a noise, and it wakes me up. Well, I started hearing a little pop noise. And you know when you're sleeping at night and you hear like the house creak and it pops?
Right.
That's, you know, but you can hear there's weight on it. Well, this pop was not like that. It sounded very light, like a rock hitting the house or something. And so I think it was the third night was the first time, because I wake up and I'm listening and the cat hasn't done anything yet. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I hear a pop and then the cat goes running underneath the dresser and starts meowing. Well, the next night, the same thing happens, except when I wake up, I'm listening for the pop. I hear it, and then I realize that's what's triggering this cat. Well, it was the fourth or fifth night, you know, I wake up, you know, and I'm listening for that. And as I'm laying there, straight above my head, you know, I'm looking straight up, I'm wide awake. I hear what sounded like a large drunk guy speak. And it was so deep that I had my bedroom door open, that it reverberated off the hallway wall. And my fear was that somebody had broken into the house. I knew that wasn't it, because I knew it came from the outside wall, right on the other side of where I was laying. But that was my fear. So I get my stepdad up, we get our guns, we go running outside, and we find nothing. The dome light of my mom's car was on, but outside of that, we all even got in the car and drove around, because if somebody's going to do that at that house, they have to have a vehicle or they're running through the woods. And we find nothing. So we just thought it was a large drunk guy. I said large because of how deep the voice was and how powerful it was. And I said a drunk guy because it sounded like he was speaking English, but I just couldn't understand it. And so that was the first time I had ever heard it speak. And the second time was after I had started looking into this, and after my gut pile got taken and I thought that these were Bigfoot. And the second time I was warming up something to eat in the microwave, and we have an island in our kitchen, and I'm walking around and I'm talking on the phone to my dad, and we have the kitchen door open, which leads you into the garage. The garage on both walls have a window. And so as I'm walking around, I'm walking in front of that doorway there, and, you know, the timer goes off. I go and look, and I'm mad because I overheated my noodles before I put the juice in there. And I put them back in, and I'm walking around talking to my dad, and I hear a man talk out in the garage. Well, I think at this point it was only me, my mom, and my nephew at the house. I think it's my stepdad. And so on my next lap around, I step in the doorway, and I peek my head out, and I'm expecting to see my stepdad on the phone. And it only said, you know, one thing. But so I thought it was him on the phone. So as I peek my head out, as soon as my head gets through the doorway, it says it again. And whatever it is on the other side of the window, standing outside of the garage. And when it says it, I jumped. And whenever I get scared, like if somebody jumps out of the corner and scares me, I make fists with my hands and I put them up on my forehead. I don't know why. Well, I'm on the phone with my dad, and I hear it, and I kind of jump and squat down and put my hands up. I back up and I slam the door, and I go and tell my mom, because my nephew was about to get in the bath. I tell her, Mom, put him in the other bath, because the other bathroom's in the center of the house. It doesn't share a wall with the outside of the house. So I'm like, put him in there. And my mom's like, oh, Dustin, you're just freaking out. You need to calm down. And I shouldn't have done it, but I did. I yelled at my mom. I'm like, Mom, do it now. And so she takes him in there, and then she comes back in the kitchen. And at this point, I've got my pistol, which was off the refrigerator, and my stepdad's pistol out now. And she comes in the kitchen, and I'm like, here, take this. And she's like, I'm not taking that. What happened? And we're standing to the doorway from our kitchen to the living room, okay? And in the living room, if you keep walking straight, there's another doorway with a glass window right in the middle of it, a big oval glass window. And we're standing there, and I'm telling her what I heard, what just happened. And I'm like, where's Dave? And she's like, I don't know, but I can call him. And as we're talking, this thing spoke for the last time right outside that window. So it moved from the garage wall to the back patio right there at the window, and it spoke, and me and my mom both jumped, and she goes, what was that? And I said, I don't know. And I stepped in front of the fridge, and I grabbed her and pulled her over there with me so it can't see us. And she goes, Dustin, who's out there? And I'm like, Mom, where is, my stepdad? And she goes, I don't know. I'll call him. I'm like, you better, because if, he's about to get shot. And so she calls, and he's at the store. So he's not there. And my mom's like, there's somebody outside. I heard him talk. And, he's like, well, did Dustin hear him or did you hear him? And she's like, no, I heard it too. And so he rushes home. We end up going outside, and there was nothing there. The odd thing is it said the same thing 3 times in a row. The first time I heard it and thought it was my stepdad. The second time when I poked my head out in the garage to look. And then the last time by the window, it said the same thing 3 times. And I can try to imitate what it said if you'd like.
Yeah.
It won't be very good, but I'll do my best. It was a lot lower than right. I can get, but I'll try. Drop, droop. That hurts my throat. It said drop, droop is what it sounded like.
Droop. Wow.
Yeah, when I was standing there with my mom, I asked her, I'm like, Mom, what did you think it said? She goes, well, I don't know. I'm like, how many syllables was it? And she was like, 2, drop, droop. And I'm like, what did the syllable start with? Like, what letter? And she's like, D's? I'm like, exactly. That's exactly what I heard, because I wanted to make sure that she could confirm what I heard as well. And I heard the same thing all 3 times. But it sounded like drop, drew, or drop, droop. I don't know, but I don't know. I've never heard anybody else say this, but it repeated the same thing 3 times in a row. And twice from outside the window in the garage, and then the last time outside the door to the patio.
We need to find out if we can find. Now you're in Missouri, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now sometimes these things have been reported to speak the Native American language. It'd be interesting to know if that meant anything in Native American from that area. It would be interesting also to know if it meant something in Hebrew or, I don't know, that maybe it's just their own language. Who knows? But yeah, that is freaky as heck, man.
Yeah, it was. And it was like the first syllable, it kind of drug out longer, like draw, droop. But I don't know. I've thought about this a lot, and I've tried to figure out was it one, just trying to scare me?
No, see,
Two,
I noticed your name has two D's.
see, I've thought about that too. It does, but again, it doesn't sound like that. So,
No, it doesn't
because
sound like that, but it doesn't mean that to them that wouldn't be the way they'd pronounce it.
well, that very well could be it. But what it sounded like, and I could be wrong, like from the first time, between the first time and second time it said it, the second time was slower. And then between the second time and the third time it said it, it was even slower. It's like it was saying it like
Just trying to slow it down.
kind of. And that might be me speculating, but it did sound, from what I can remember, like it was saying it, and that's kind of the feeling I got from it, was it was
Okay,
like
well,
almost saying something
yeah.
like,
Okay, and it may have said a lot more, but because these Sierra sounds and stuff like that, they think that if you were slow, well, Ron Moorhead thought that they were trying to slow down their talk so you could understand it. And
it was
so it might have been something where they were trying to slow something down to where you could understand what it was saying. I mean, that's only a guess, that's for sure. But like if you have that feeling that that was happening, that would fit perfectly with what has been reported before on the talk. Because typically it would be like, you know, it sounded like samurai chatter, and then every once in a while it would be like they would slow it down so you could hear it, you know, kind of deal.
yeah.
But they might not get it perfect, you know. So, but the fact that it had the D's in there, yeah,
I don't know,
Dustin,
man.
Duncan,
It's it's crazy. I don't know what it was saying. Here's one thing I do believe, that these things, when they know that you know they're there, the whole game changes. It's
yeah.
like they mess with you and just you. Because I've had I know we're coming
Yeah.
up on 2 hours, so I won't go
Look,
into it.
I
But
had another dude on the show, and I said the exact same thing. He made tree knocks to them and some calls, and that's when his activity started. And he didn't have the activity before that, you know. It was okay. They know we're here, and they started messing with him big time. Now, if they know that you know, then it's on. And yeah, I mean, what do you make of that? You know, I mean,
I don't know.
what can you make of that other
It,
than it fits the scenario of other things that I've covered. You know, over time, you know, when you cover all the different mysteries, the big picture starts to kind of come together. And so, yeah, the fact that it was two D's, that really kind of makes me think they were addressing you.
it may have been. I don't know, but I've thought about it a lot, and I can't. I don't know if they were. I don't know if they were trying to say something to me. Why? I don't know, because it obviously, when I poked my head out in the garage, I mean, as soon as I did, it spoke, and I dropped like almost in a fetal position, like my butt was almost touching the ground, and I had my hands up, and I had the phone in my hand, and I was like, Dad, I gotta call you back, and I hung up on him, put the phone down, and he was calling the whole time because trying to figure out what was going on. But it had to have seen that it scared me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I slam the door, and then I go over to this other point, and then it moves around the backside of the house to come to that door, and it spoke again right outside the door
It
where
knew
it
where
had
you
to
were
have been
at.
looking. Yeah, like I
Yeah,
think
that's what
me
I had another show, dude, where I talked about they are reconning your home, so they know your reactions, where you're going to be in the home, where you're going to move to through the home. Um, that is a intelligence, man.
Yeah,
How they know where you were going to go, how they know where you're going to be, how they know where they should speak from.
I,
I've had people gather a gun up. They knew where they were going to be to get the gun, growled at them, and then they went and waited for them where they knew they were going to come with the gun. And lured them by throwing a dog through the window in another area to postpone them. And,
yeah,
they've been watching in the windows for so long.
exactly.
They know where you're going to be, how your movements are through the home. They probe your home. They're reconning you. Um, that's very scary stuff. That's not animal stuff. A coyote can come look in your window and he ain't gonna know nothing like that. You know.
Yeah, it's definitely when it said the first thing. It was when I was walking in front. I was walking around the corner closest to the doorway, so it had to have just seen me. And I was doing laps. I was pacing because whenever I talk on the phone and I'm standing up, I pace. And so it said the first thing, so I went around and did another lap, and that's when I poked my head out and it said the third thing. And then I slammed the door, and the only other place that you can see into the house, because we have blinds on everything else, was that back door. And I can tell you this, every time I go back to visit my mom, if I stay the night there or if it's nighttime, I take paper towels and I hang them over that because it's an oval window and it's like a real stretched out oval window, so it's real long but not very wide. And I always take paper towels and fridge magnets, and because the door's made out of metal, and I put them over that so nothing can look in.
There was this dude from Kentucky I had on, and they were getting on the roof listening down through the chimney.
Wow.
Yeah, they would hear him go across the roof, and they would listen through the chimney at their conversations, and they would say certain things, and they would react on the chimney to what they were saying. Like when they would get mad or something, they would stomp on the chimney or on the roof and what have you. Um, but they were listening to their conversations through the chimney. And a lot of the Native Americans think that they knew the language from the area that they lived in because they listened to people and so much from whatever the area they're in, they speak the language of the area that they're in. And it makes me wonder, but do they speak it so fast because they're so fast thinking that they slow it down to try to get you to understand it? Um,
I don't know, but it was the Sierra sounds, not where like there's one disc where it sounds like two of them are arguing, and then there's another disc where it sounds like a whole group of them, one's banging like a rock and they're like talking. That is exactly what it sounded like, except it wasn't sentences. It was just two syllables, like one phrase, and it repeated it the same
right.
three times. Now the
And
first time I heard it, I don't think it said the same thing, but it only said a few syllables. I think it said kind of like two phrases the first time I heard it. It was very short, but I don't remember the exact how many syllables or the sound that it made. But when I heard it the second time, I made it a point to ask my mom what she heard, to make sure it was what I heard, so I would remember it.
yeah, and with Ron Moorhead, there was a time where he thought that they slowed it down to try to address him. And there's another research group that they would slow it down, and it sounded almost like a deaf, kind of retarded person talking and repeating words that they would say because they were trying to habituate these things. And I'm sitting there thinking, dude. And they had so many strange things happen, like footprints come up to the house in the snow, and then all of a sudden they were gone. but I think they were getting on the roof and they would jump in the trees and they would, I don't think they can just disappear like they're thinking. I think that they
Yeah.
have ways that they're doing it, and it makes it seem like footprints disappeared right here. Yeah, they came up to
Yeah.
the porch, but then you didn't look on the roof, and then from the roof you didn't look in the trees because they can go through the trees. But anyway, that's all theory, but I think the theory is correct because they're not disappearing. They're there, and sometimes they might backtrack through the prints and stuff like that. But anyway, man, your stories are fascinating, man, and I know that you have some more kind of on the paranormal side stories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
This was whenever I was younger.
yeah, we'll do those on a separate show, and then and then I'll come on your show and I'll tell some different stories of my own, and so people can look forward to that on your show. But if you want to, why don't you plug your show from right now, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, first of all, Brenton, I would like to thank you for having me on your show. Before I started my podcast, your show was one of the ways it helped me deal with it, listening to the encounters on your show. So I would like to thank you for that. And if anybody out there is interested in joining my channel, please subscribe. My channel is Crypto PTSD, CRYPTO, and then a space and then PTSD on YouTube. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to shoot me an email or be on the show, my email address is cryptoptsd, all one word, all lowercase, no spacing, at gmail.com. And if it's an encounter, please put encounter in the subject line. That way I can separate it out from all the others. And I hope that my show continues to grow, and one day I get to the level you're at, Brenton.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure you will, man. Yeah, and I'll put the channel in the cards. So if you tap the screen, you'll see a little white dot pop up in the right corner. Tap that dot, it'll drop down a menu, and I'll have his channel in the cards there. And I'll also put a link in the description so that you can go to his channel super easy and subscribe. And so, everyone out there, I appreciate you all listening this evening, and look forward to some more stories coming from Dustin here, and we will talk about some of his more supernatural encounters, but we'll separate that out into a different show. And if anyone out there has something they want to share here, contact me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. If you want to contribute, you can go to the PayPal me in the description also. And basically, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this. Super fascinating story, I think, and it really corroborates a lot of the things that we've talked about in the past. Um, it's just such a mystery. That's all there is to it. But anyway, God bless you. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.